The marketplace was alive with sounds and colors. Stalls stretched in long rows, filled with bright fruits from distant planets, shining metal tools, and strange fabrics that glowed faintly in the light. The air was filled with voices merchants, calling out their prices, buyers haggling, children laughing as they ran between the stalls. It was a place where many species gathered, all mixing together in a swirl of cultures. Among the busy crowd, an old alien walked slowly, his steps unsteady. His body was thin, his back bent with age, and his skin, once bright and strong, now looked pale and tired. His eyes carried the weight of years, but there was still a spark of dignity in the way he held himself. He carried a small bag, empty, for he had come to buy food. The old alien moved to a stall selling simple meals. He pointed with a trembling hand to a small portion of bread-like food. Nothing fancy, just enough to quiet the hunger inside him. The merchant handed the food over, expecting payment. The alien reached into the folds of his worn robe and pulled out a few coins. He counted them carefully, his fingers shaking, but the coins were too few. He looked again, searching in his pockets, but there was nothing more. The merchant's face hardened. Rules of the market were strict: no payment, no goods. The old alien tried to explain, his voice soft and weak. He said he had been saving, but the little he had was not enough. He promised he would find a way to pay the rest soon, but the merchant would not listen. The merchant called out for the guards. 2 alien guards approached quickly. They were tall, wearing armor with sharp edges that glinted in the light. Their eyes were cold, their movements strict and powerful. When they reached the stall, the merchant explained that the old alien had tried to take food without enough payment. The guards turned their gaze to the elder. The old alien raised his hands in defense, his voice trembling as he tried to explain. He did not mean to steal, he said, only that he was hungry and had no one else to help him. But the guards did not care. To them, rules were rules, and kindness was weakness. They told him he must leave the marketplace at once. The crowd had gathered now, curious about the scene. People stopped shopping, their eyes fixed on the drama. Some whispered to each other, others shook their heads, yet no one stepped forward to help. The old alien's voice cracked as he begged for mercy. He reminded them that he had once been a worker, someone who had given years of service to their society. He had built machines, carried loads, and helped keep the marketplace alive in his younger days. But now, old and fragile, he had no job, no income, and no family to support him. His words echoed in the air, but the guards remained unmoved. They grabbed his arm roughly, pulling him away from the stall. The old alien stumbled, nearly falling to the ground. His food dropped from his hands, rolling into the dust. A sharp laugh came from someone in the crowd, though most people looked away, ashamed to see such cruelty. The elder tried once more, his voice filled with pain. He said that he only wanted to eat to survive another day. He was not asking for luxury, only for a small kindness. But the guards tightened their grip, dragging him toward the edge of the market. For the old alien, it felt like the end of dignity. He had spent his whole life working, contributing, and living with pride. But now, in front of strangers, he was being treated like a criminal thrown out for the crime of being poor and hungry. His heart ached more than his body as he saw the faces in the crowd, none stepping forward to defend him. The marketplace, once a place of life and trade, had turned cold and cruel. The noise of merchants and buyers had fallen silent around this moment. Every eye was watching, but every mouth was closed. The old alien felt smaller with each step the guards forced him to take. He wondered if this was how his life would end, not in honor, but in humiliation before strangers. As he stumbled again, he caught himself against the ground, his knees scraping the dirt. The guards barked at him to rise quickly, their voices loud and harsh. He tried to push himself up, but his strength was fading. He looked around desperately, hoping that anyone might see the unfairness and step in. But the crowd remained. Still, a sea of silent faces. Some felt pity, but feared the guard's power. Others thought it was not their problem. The old alien realized in that moment how truly alone he was. The society he had once served had no place for him anymore. And so, with trembling hands and a broken voice, he whispered words of sorrow, more to himself than to the guards. He said that he had given his life to help others, and now, in his weakest hour, no one would even give him a meal. His words, though quiet, carried through the marketplace. A painful truth that some wished they had not heard. The guards pulled him to his feet, ready to drag him outside. Dust clung to his clothes, and his head hung low. The people watched, their silence a heavy weight in the air. The old alien's heart sank deeper with each step, believing that this was the way his story would end. In hunger, in shame, and in loneliness. Yet, somewhere in the crowd, a pair of human eyes had been watching closely. The old alien's body shook as the guards dragged him farther from the stall. His feet scraped against the rough ground, and his legs almost gave out with every step. The voices of the market were now a distant hum, but he still felt the heavy weight of eyes on his back. Shame burned inside him more than hunger. He had not imagined his long years of labor and loyalty to his people would end with him being thrown out like worthless trash. He tried to speak again, his dry voice breaking as the words left his throat. He told the guards that he had once built ships for their fleets, that his hands had shaped the metal which carried soldiers across the stars. He reminded them that when he was younger, he had worked long hours without rest, believing he was building a future for his people. But now he was weak, his body slow, his hands trembling. He asked only for a single meal. The guards did not slow down. To them, he was only a problem to remove. Their faces showed no compassion. One of them even muttered that the elder should have planned better for his old age, that it was not their job to feed useless mouths. Their words pierced the old alien deeper than any blade could have. He wondered if this was what he had worked for his whole life, only to be cast aside when his strength was gone. The marketplace stretched ahead, full of light and movement, but to him it felt like a stage where he was being publicly humiliated. Children pointed as he stumbled, whispering to their parents. Merchants leaned closer to see the scene, then turned back to their stalls, pretending they did not care. Some looked away, embarrassed by the cruelty, but none dared to speak. The old alien's heart grew heavy with each silent face he passed. He thought about his younger days, when his back was strong and his steps were quick. He remembered carrying heavy crates on his shoulders, building machines, and sharing food with his family when the day's work was done. Life had not always been easy, but it had been full of purpose. Now, that purpose was gone. His family was gone. His home had been sold long ago when his health began to fail. All he had left was himself, and even that was crumbling. The guards pulled him through the crowd and closer to the edge of the market. He could see the open road ahead, leading into emptiness. His stomach ached with hunger, and his spirit ached with something worse, hopelessness. If they threw him out, he had nowhere to go. No home, no coins, no strength to travel. He would not last long outside. He tried to resist, not out of strength, but out of desperation. His voice rose, trembling but loud enough for people nearby to hear. He begged for mercy again, saying he was not a thief, only an old man with no means. He stretched his hands toward the crowd, his eyes pleading with strangers who refused to meet his gaze. His words hung in the air like a broken prayer. For a moment, the guards stopped to adjust their grip on him. The old alien fell to his knees, his body too weak to stand. His breath came in short, painful gasps. He pressed his palms against the ground, trying to lift himself, but his arms gave way. Dust clung to his clothes, and the sharp stones bit into his knees. He raised his face to the crowd one last time. His eyes were wet, though not just from pain, but from the crushing feeling of being abandoned. He told them he had once dreamed that his people would care for their elders, that kindness would live on among them. But now, that dream seemed broken. The guards leaned down, ready to pull him up again. One of them shook his head, calling him pathetic. The others said they were wasting time with him. They spoke of him as if he were not even alive, just a problem, a burden to move out of sight. The elder's lips trembled. He whispered to himself that he wished someone, anyone, would remember that he was more than just an old body. He had been strong once, useful once, loved once. Now, in this moment, he was only a shadow of who he had been. Asterisk. The crowd still watched. Some felt pity, but fear held their tongues. The guards were powerful, and to challenge them was to invite punishment. So they stood still, their silence cutting deeper into the old alien than the guards' hands ever. As the guards pulled at him once more, the elder stopped resisting. His strength was gone, his hope nearly gone too. His head hung low, his body limp in their grip. He thought perhaps it was better this way, that he would fade quietly beyond the market, away from the shameful stares. But even as he surrendered to despair, his heart still whispered one final wish, that just once, someone would stand beside him, not for payment, not for reward, but because it was the right thing to do. The guards began to drag him forward again, their heavy boots thudding against the ground. The market's noises started to return, though softer now, as people turned back to their business, trying to erase the uncomfortable scene from their minds. The elder closed his eyes, his body swaying like a leaf in the wind. Yet, in the distance, footsteps moved against the flow of the crowd. A different presence was approaching, strong, calm, and unafraid. A pair of eyes, sharp and human, had seen everything from the beginning. Unlike the others, this figure did not look away. Unlike the others, this one was stepping forward. The old alien, too weak to notice, did not yet know that his silent prayer was about to be answered. The human had been wandering through the marketplace, moving slowly, his eyes curious as he looked at the strange items on display. He had traveled far, across stars and unknown routes, and he had seen many worlds. But he had never grown used to the unfairness that sometimes hid. Beneath the beauty of these busy places, he noticed the commotion before most people. At first, he thought it was just a disagreement between a customer and a merchant. It was common in places like this. But when he saw the frail, bent figure of the old alien being pulled roughly by armored guards, he stopped in his tracks. Something inside him tightened. He could not just pass by. The human moved closer, weaving through the crowd. His tall frame and steady steps drew attention, though he ignored the curious looks. His eyes stayed fixed on the elder, who struggled like a leaf in the hands of a storm. He saw the alien fall to his knees, saw the dust cling to his worn clothes, and heard the broken voice begging for mercy. The sound pierced the human more than the shouts of the guards ever could. Around him, the crowd stood still, frozen between pity and fear. Some shook their heads, others muttered under their breath, but none dared step forward. The human's jaw tightened. He had seen this before, too many times, people hiding behind silence, leaving the weak to suffer alone. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. He was an outsider here, a traveler with no authority and no protection. But he was also human. And for him, that meant something important. He could not stay silent while someone was treated with such cruelty. The guards jerked the old alien to his feet again, their grip harsh, their faces cold. The elder stumbled, his knees trembling as if they could no longer hold him. The human's fists clenched at his sides. Enough was enough. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise of the market. It was not loud, but it carried weight. "Stop," he said. The crowd turned their heads at once. Whispers rippled through them like wind through leaves. Few had expected anyone to speak, and fewer still had expected it to be the human. The guards stopped, surprised for a moment. They turned their eyes toward him, their expressions hardening as they saw who had dared to interfere. The human walked closer, his gaze steady. His movements were calm but firm, each step deliberate. He did not raise his hands in aggression, but his presence alone was enough to make the moment heavier. The crowd held its breath, sensing the tension thickening. In the air, the elder lifted his head weakly, his vision blurry, but he saw the figure approaching. His heart trembled with confusion. Who was this stranger? Why would anyone, especially an outsider, dare to stand against the guards? A small flicker of hope lit in his tired chest, though he feared it might soon be crushed. The guards straightened, gripping their weapons tightly. One of them barked out, "This is none of your business, human. Walk away." But the human did not move back. His eyes met theirs, unflinching. He is old. He is hungry. That is not a crime. His voice was calm, yet sharp enough to cut through. The silence, the guards exchanged a glance, their faces full of annoyance. They were used to fear, to silence, to obedience. Rarely did anyone challenge them. And never had it been a human. A species still seen by many as strange newcomers in the galaxy. "Step aside," one guard warned. "This is our law. He cannot pay. He does not eat." The human tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. He could feel the eyes of the crowd on him, waiting to see what he would do. He knew he was outnumbered, but fear did not guide him. Something deeper died a belief that dignity mattered more than rules written without compassion. He looked at the old alien, still trembling in their grip. For a brief moment, the human saw not just an alien, but a mirror of all the elders he had known in his own life's grandparents. Teachers, workers who had given their years to build something better. None of them deserved to be thrown aside. Neither did this one. The human's voice grew firmer. "Then your law is broken." A hush fell across the marketplace. The words hung heavy, daring, dangerous. The guards stiffened, their hands moving toward their weapons. The crowd whispered nervously, uncertain what would happen next. The old alien's eyes widened. He could hardly believe what he had heard. A stranger, a human no less, was standing for him when even his own people would not. His heart, tired and fragile, felt a sudden warmth, like a spark of life returning. The guards took a step closer to the human, their eyes burning with warning. But the human did not move. He stood tall, his presence steady like a wall. For the first time, the balance of power in the marketplace shifted not through weapons or threats, but through one person's refusal to look away. The moment stretched on, tense and heavy. The old alien's breath caught in his chest, waiting to see if this human's bravery would save him or only bring more trouble. The crowd leaned in, silent, caught between fear and awe. And in that silence, the human's calm voice returned, softer but just as unshakable. "Let him go." The marketplace was frozen. The usual noise of bargaining, laughter, and chatter had vanished into a heavy silence. All eyes were on the CN2 guards holding the old alien by the arms and the human standing firm before them. It was a moment that seemed too unreal. It's like time itself had paused to watch what would happen next. The guards did not like being challenged. Their authority was rarely questioned, and when it was, they silenced it quickly. One of them stepped forward, his armor clinking with each move, and glared at the human. "This is not your place. You are a visitor here. You have no right to interfere." The human did not flinch. His face remained calm, but his eyes were sharp, steady as steel. "I have the right to speak when I see injustice," he said, his voice carrying easily through the crowd. "And this is injustice." The elder alien looked up, his weak body trembling in the grip of the guards. His tired eyes searched the human's face, trying to understand why someone, especially a human, would risk so much for him. The warmth of hope stirred in his chest again, fragile but real. The guard sneered. "He failed to pay. That is the law. If he cannot pay, he does not eat. We do not bend rules for beggars." The human took another step closer, closing the distance between them. He did not raise his voice, but the strength in his tone made it clear he would not back down. "He is not a beggar. He is old, he is hungry. That is not a crime. The crime is treating him as if he has no worth." The words rippled through the crowd, pulling at something deep inside them. Many lowered their heads, ashamed that they had not spoken first. The guards, however, only grew angrier. One gripped his weapon tightly, ready to remind the human of his place. "Step back," the guard barked. "This is your final warning." But the human stood tall, unshaken. His voice was calm, steady, and firm. "No, I will not step back. If you want to throw someone out today, throw me out instead." The crowd gasped. Whispers ran like a wave through the people, shock and disbelief spreading quickly. Never before had anyone stood against the guards so openly, and certainly not on behalf of an elder who had no power or influence. The elder himself could hardly believe it. His lips trembled as if he wanted to speak, but no words came. The guards exchanged looks. They were used to fear. They were used to silence. But this human was neither afraid nor silent. That unsettled them. One of them stepped forward until he was face to face with the human. His voice was low, filled with menace. "Do you understand what you are doing? You risk more than just his shame. You risk your life." The human's eyes never wavered. He answered simply, "Then it is a risk worth taking." The tension was so thick, it seemed the air itself was holding its breath. Children clung to their parents. Merchants leaned over their stalls, and even the animals tied nearby grew restless. Everyone waited for the moment to break for violence, for punishment. For something terrible, the guards shoved the elder aside, letting him fall roughly to the ground. Dust rose around his frail body as he groaned in pain. Now both guards focused on the human, their stance wide, their hands near their weapons. One spoke with anger dripping from his words. "You are far from your world, human. Do not think. Your strange sense of morality protects you here." The human took one slow step forward, his shadow falling across the guards. His voice was low, but carried clear enough for all to hear. "And do not think your armor or authority makes you right. Strength without compassion is weakness. Power without justice is hollow." The marketplace went silent again. Every word echoed like a stone thrown into still water, rippling across the hearts of the people. Many of them had thought such things before, but had never dared to say them aloud. Now this human was speaking what they could not. The elder, still on the ground, felt tears sting his eyes. He had believed he was invisible, forgotten, worthless. Yet here was someone, a stranger from another species, standing in the line of fire for him. He whispered softly to himself, words no one else could hear. "Perhaps I am not alone after." All the guards hesitated. They had the weapons, the authority, the law. But for the first time, they felt the weight of the crowd's eyes, not in support, but in judgment. The human had shifted the balance. If they attacked him now, the people might finally find their courage to resist. One guard snarled, trying to cover his uncertainty with anger. "Why? Why would you care for him? He is not your kind. He is nothing to you. The human looked down at the old alien lying in the dust, then back at the guards. His answer was simple, but it struck harder than any blade. Because he is someone. That is enough. The words settled into the air like fire spreading slowly but surely. The guards clenched their fists, but they did not move. The human's courage was not the kind they were trained to fight. He was not threatening them with violence, but with something far more dangerous truth. The crowd felt it too. They had witnessed countless acts of cruelty before, but this time something was different. This time someone had stood up. And not just anyone, a human, a stranger, one who owed them nothing. The shame of their silence grew heavier. The elder, with trembling arms, tried to rise from the ground. The human reached down and gently helped him stand, his touch respectful, careful not to hurt. The elder leaned against him, his weak frame, dwarfed by the human's strength. The guards glared, but they did not move. The marketplace held its breath, waiting for what would come next. For now, the human had not only stopped their cruelty, but also planted something deeper, a seed of defiance, of compassion, of hope. And though the fight was not yet over, everyone watching knew that something had shifted forever. The air in the marketplace felt heavy, as if every breath carried the weight of what had just happened. The guards stood stiff, their eyes locked on the human, but they had not moved further. The crowd remained silent, their faces tense, waiting to see how far this stranger would go. The old alien leaned weakly against the human, his body shaking, but his eyes were wide with disbelief. He had lived many long years, yet he had never seen anyone, let alone a human, stand. For him in this way, the human looked down at the elder and then back at the guards. He knew that words alone would not end this. These guards lived by law and coin. If the old alien had no money, then they would always see him as worthless. So the human reached slowly into the pocket of his worn coat. The crowd leaned forward, watching every move. The human pulled out a small pouch of currency, chips earned from his travels, saved carefully for his own needs. He weighed it in his hand for a moment, feeling the rough edges of the chips press against his skin. They were not many, but they were enough. He stepped closer to the merchant's stall, his voice calm but firm. "His debt is mine now," the human said. "I will pay what he owes." Gasps ran through the crowd. People whispered in disbelief, their eyes darting between the human, the merchant, and the old alien. No one had expected this. Some had thought the human would challenge the guards and then walk away. But to pay, to give his own hard-earned money for a stranger, for someone not even of his species, that was something none of them had ever imagined. The merchant's eyes widened. He had not expected payment either. He had only wanted the guards to handle the matter quickly. Now he hesitated, unsure of what to say. But greed was stronger than hesitation. Slowly, he extended his hand. The human placed the chips firmly into his palm. The merchant checked the value and found it more than enough. In fact, the human had given more than was owed. The merchant looked up in surprise, but the human only said quietly, "The rest is for him, so tomorrow he will not go hungry again." The elder alien's knees buckled as if the strength had left his legs all at once. He stared at the human with wide, tearful eyes. His lips trembled, but no sound came out at first. He could not believe it. He had expected to be cast aside, forgotten, left to starve. Yet here was a stranger who not only saved him from humiliation, but gave him food for another day. The guards stepped forward, their voices sharp with anger. "You should not interfere, human," one of them growled. "You shame yourself by..." lowering to his level. But the human turned toward them, his gaze steady. "No," he said. "Shame is seeing someone suffer, and doing nothing. I will carry this shame instead of you." The words struck the crowd like a spark falling into dry grass. They had stood silent, afraid of the guards, afraid of punishment. But this human had acted with no fear, with no hesitation. His kindness made their silence feel heavier, their hearts restless. The old alien finally found his voice. It was soft, trembling, but filled with emotion. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would you do this for me? I am nothing to you." The human bent down slightly so his eyes met the elder's. His answer was simple. "Because you are someone. That is enough." Tears rolled down the old alien's cheeks. He had been invisible for so long, overlooked and forgotten. But in this moment, he felt seen again. He felt human kindness touch a place inside him that had long grown cold. The guards clenched their fists. Their pride wounded, but they could not argue now. The debt was paid. By law, they had no reason to continue. Their power had been broken, not by force, but by the simple act of compassion. The crowd began to murmur, louder now. Words of admiration spread among them. Some nodded, others even smiled faintly. For the first time in many years, they had witnessed something greater than fear, an act of courage and kindness that none of them would forget. The merchant, still holding the chips, bowed his head slightly, uneasy with the weight of what had just happened. He had only seen the elder as a debtor, a nuisance. But the human had reminded everyone that life was worth more than coin. The old alien lowered himself to his knees, pressing his forehead to the ground before the human. His frail body trembled, but his heart overflowed with gratitude. "You have given me back my dignity," he whispered. "I thought I would die in shame, but you have given me hope again." The human knelt beside him, lifting him gently. "Stand," he said softly. "No one should bow for kindness. It is not a gift. It is what should always be given." The elder's tears fell freely now. The crowd was silent again, but this silence was different. Which wonder? Many of them would carry this moment in their hearts for years, telling others of the day a human paid for an elder who is not his own kind. The guards, defeated, turned and left, muttering under their breath. They could not fight against the law they themselves enforced. The debt was cleared. Their authority had been challenged, but they could do nothing more. The human helped the old alien to sit by the side of the stall. He picked up the food that had fallen earlier, dusted it gently, and placed it back into the elder's trembling hands. The alien held it tightly, as if it were more precious than gold. The marketplace slowly returned to its rhythm, but the air had changed. People no longer looked at the elder with pity, but with a kind of respect. They no longer looked at the human as just an outsider, but as someone who had reminded them of the meaning of dignity. And as the sun dipped lower in the sky, the story of what had just happened began to spread of a human who stood against cruelty, who paid a debt that was not his, and who proved that compassion could be stronger than fear. Asterisk. The old alien often sat with the human after the day's work was done. They shared quiet moments, speaking little but understanding much. The elder would sometimes laugh softly and say, "Do you know, you've become a legend already." The human would shake his head with a half-smile, answering, "Legends are for warriors. I'm just a man who couldn't look away." But deep inside, even he began to realize that something larger was happening. His act had created ripples, like a stone thrown into water. Each ripple touched more lives than he could count. People were not just remembering the moment, they were learning from it. Some who had once ignored the suffering of others now thought twice. Some who had stayed silent began to wonder if they too should speak. The guards grew uneasy, sensing that the Humans' influence was spreading in ways they could not control. They had power through fear, but fear was weakening. Respect was beginning to take its place, and respect was far stronger. By the end of the week, the marketplace no longer felt the same. It buzzed not only with trade, but with a strange new energy hope. And at the center of it all was the memory of one simple act. A man standing for someone who could not stand for himself. The elder would later say that this was the turning point. Not just for him, but for the entire city. One moment of courage had awakened something that had been sleeping inside many hearts. And though the human did not seek glory, he had unknowingly become the spark for change. Asterisk days turned into weeks. And the story of the human's action refused to fade away. What happened in the marketplace was no longer just an event. It had become a tale told in homes, shops, and even in the streets of faraway towns. People repeated it to each other with pride, and every time the story was shared, it grew stronger, like fire catching dry wood. The human never asked for this attention. He still lived simply, walking through the market as before, buying what he needed and helping where he could. Yet everywhere he went, people looked at him differently. Some greeted him warmly, while others stepped aside to let him pass. A small sign of respect. Mothers told their children, "Be brave like him. Do not fear when you see wrong being done." For the young ones, he became a living example of honor. The elder alien who had been rescued felt the biggest change of all. For years, he had lived in silence, ignored or treated as a burden. But now, people looked at him with kinder eyes. They asked how he was doing. Some offered him food or helped him with small tasks. He no longer felt invisible. Instead, he felt seen, valued, and respected again. Sometimes he would sit outside his home, and younger aliens would gather around him, asking to hear his version of the story. He would smile softly and say, "I was only lucky to have met a man who remembered what kindness means." But not everyone celebrated the change. The alien guards who had been shamed that day grew bitter. To them, the story was not about kindness, was about their humiliation. Each time they heard the whispers, it reminded them of the moment they had been stopped by someone they thought was weak. They watched the human carefully, waiting for a chance to strike back. But with so many eyes admiring him, they dared not act openly. One evening, the human sat with the elder near the edge of the marketplace. The elder looked at him with thoughtful eyes and said, "Do you realize what you have done? You think it was just one moment, but it was not. You planted something in people's hearts. You reminded them that courage is not about strength of body, but strength of spirit." The human shook his head with a small smile. "Only did what anyone should have done. Others see more in it, that is their choice." The elder leaned closer and replied softly, "That is exactly why they see more in you. You did not act for glory. You acted for what is right. That is why the story grows." In the following days, the change spread further. When guards tried to bully weaker merchants, more people dared to speak up. When unfair taxes were demanded, traders united and resisted instead of bowing silently. The story of the human had given them courage. They thought, if one man can stand against injustice, why can't we? It was not rebellion, not yet, but it was a shift of spirit. Fear was no longer the strongest force in the marketplace. Hope had taken its place. And that hope frightened those who had built their power on fear. The human noticed these changes too. He saw more people helping each other, standing together, and refusing to let cruelty pass unchecked. He felt proud, but also worried. He knew that when ordinary people found courage, those in power would try harder to break them. He wondered if more trouble was coming. One night, the elder said to him, "Even if trouble comes, it will not erase what you did." Stories are stronger than weapons. Weapons can silence a voice, but they cannot silence the memory of what was said. The guards could stop you, but they cannot stop the story. It has already escaped their grasp, and the elder was right. The tale had already traveled beyond the city, carried by merchants and travelers. In distant towns, people told it as if it were a legend. Some changed the details. Some said the human fought the guards. Others said he stood tall and shamed them, with words sharper than swords. But always, the heart of the tale was the same. That one human stood against injustice for the sake of an old alien. And in doing so, reminded everyone of the power of kindness. The human never claimed to be a hero. But in time, that is what he became in the eyes of many. The elder often laughed gently when people called him the man of honor or the defender. He would tell the human, "You may not see it, but you have become more than just yourself. You have become a symbol, and symbols live longer than men." As seasons changed, the story settled deeply into the memory of the city. Parents told it to their children, and those children would one day tell it to theirs. It became more than just history. It became a lesson, a reminder, and a light in darker times. And so, one simple act in a crowded marketplace grew into something greater than anyone could have imagined. It was not about strength, or wealth, or power. It was about a choice to stand for what was right when silence would have been easier. That choice touched hearts, spread across lands, and outlived the moment itself. The old alien often ended his retelling with these words, "Do not think small of kindness. Even the smallest flame can drive away the deepest shadows. I know this because I lived it. I was saved not by a soldier, not by a king, but by an ordinary man who remembered what it meant to be human. And though the human continued to live humbly, never chasing fame or reward, his story became eternal. It was told not only as a tale of the past, but as a guide for the future. A reminder that in every age, in every place, courage and compassion could change the world. Asterisk,